Hey everyone, today's episode is kind of a bonus one. I've got a bunch of Disney adjacent episodes coming up as my summer is going to be a bit too packed to get to the next film in the Disney canon right away. But with today's podcast, I couldn't even really call it a Disney adjacent episode. This was a television special made by a rival studio with talent probably mostly from Warner Brothers. We're talking Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I just wanted to share this episode as a teaser for the whole series I'm doing for Christmas in July over on my other podcast, Every Version Ever. All month long we're covering versions of The Grinch, all the mainstream versions and the obscure ones, so if you like the story, make sure to check that series out over there. This will be the only episode of that series that I share here. None of the films and specials we'll be talking about are particularly Disney adjacent, but the original does have a lot of nostalgia factor that a lot of classic Disney movies have, so I figured if there were any that might interest this audience, it would be that one. Plus, I decided to give you the extended version, so it's actually 2 episodes in one. We're also talking about the sequels. Next week we'll be back to something a lot more Disney adjacent than this. We'll be talking all the animation from last year, including every animated Disney movie released in 2023. Until then, here's a Christmas in July bonus talking about the original 1966 How the Grinch Stole Christmas television special and its 2 obscure and kind of forgotten about sequels. Hey everyone, it's Jonathan and welcome back to Christmas in July on Every Version Ever. Last year I did Every Version Ever of the Nutcracker, and of course Every Version Ever is technically hyperbole, so there are more Nutcrackers to go, and I was planning on doing another batch this year. However, I also had another idea that I've been kicking around in my mind for a while. What if I did a different story every year for Christmas in July? I will get back to Nutcracker eventually, but there is another story I've wanted to do for years now, Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And for this one, Every Version Ever is not hyperbole. In fact, I can actually go above and beyond the 3 official versions that are out there. Everyone knows about the original animated Christmas special, the live-action Jim Carrey film, and the recent animated adaptation from Illumination starring Benedict Cumberbatch. However, the Grinch has shown up in several other movies and specials over the years, and this month I think we're actually going to cover Every Version Ever of the Grinch. Of course, kicking this whole thing off, we had to go back to the beginning, the original special from 1966. I invited several friends to join me for this one. Today I'm joined by Carmen, aka Pikachu Cat, Mark, aka The Animation Commendation, and Nicki, aka Trivial Theater, and we're talking about the very first adaptation of Dr. Seuss's Christmas classic from Looney Tunes animator Chuck Jones, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And then, unbeknownst to probably most people, there are actually 2 official sequels to the original 1966 special. Halloween is Grinch Night from 1977, and The Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat from 1981, and we're talking about them all. Well, to start, I will say this is possibly the first time I've seen this. It might be the second, but was not very familiar with the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I remember watching some scenes of it, like obviously the song. I've seen the song a lot. I don't remember why I've seen the song so much, but not the rest of it. But watching it for this was like, I don't remember half of this stuff.
That's quite interesting.
I'm kind of the same like you. I didn't grow up with this either, so I think I've only seen it once before rewatching it for our podcast.
I actually watched it when I was a kid. They used to
Nice.
show it in elementary school during like Christmas.
I was gonna say I know I know the first one like it's the back of my hand, so
Yeah.
Well, I know it used to play on TV a lot, but my family didn't watch a whole lot of the Christmas specials. Like, I also haven't really seen the Peanuts Christmas special other than like once. We just didn't watch the Christmas specials. We had some Christmas movies we liked, we'd borrow from the library or that we owned. We watched Christmas movies more than we watched Christmas specials on TV. We weren't the family that eagerly anticipated the stop motion Christmas specials or the Peanuts movie or the Grinch. We didn't wait for those to air like some families did. I know my cousins did. They all loved Rudolph and Frosty and the Grinch and Charlie Brown, but my family didn't watch those much at all.
That's interesting.
well, and it goes to show you every family works a little differently in that respect too.
Hmm.
Yeah, for me, the Christmas special that I would watch all every year, as Jonathan knows, it was Arthur's Perfect Christmas. That was what I would look forward to because I
Nice.
only had PBS, and that was kind of the only Christmas special I think I could watch.
Well, it's a good one to choose, I'd say.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it.
I would imagine watching the animation style of even the original and the sequels or sequel and prequel is quite jarring compared to like looking at something like Arthur, just because it's not a downgrade, but it is so typical of that era. You know, because
Hmm.
you got one from the 60s, you got one from the 70s, and one from the 80s.
And the 60s one in particular is very Looney Tunes. Like, obviously, this is by Chuck Jones, but like, just the way it was animated, the different movements, the way the dog reacted to things, the facial expressions, it was basically a Looney Tunes cartoon.
I think I read.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. It is totally Chuck Jones in its approach.
I think I read somewhere that in the end, the Grinch and that ended up looking more like Chuck Jones than it did Dr. Seuss's actual drawing of how the
I
Grinch
th
looks in the book.
I thought that tonight because I decided to watch it again and I bought the book. So I was going through the book with the special just to see how much it was the same. Because I thought to myself when I was putting this together, I was like, I bet this is going to be the first story that is word for word exactly the same with the book and the special. And I was wrong.
Oh no, they have a lot of details in the special.
I was kind of surprised at how much it differed. Like it's obviously very similar, but there was enough different that I was kind of surprised. Like different lines were omitted and little word changes. Like instead of hanging a mistletoe wreath like he did in the book, they changed it to holly who wreath. It was like that's kind of I don't know. Somebody wanted to do some artistic license, and all the gadgets. None of the gadgets that they named off were in the book, which I was surprised by because they all seemed like something that Dr. Seuss would write.
I think they had to fill the half an hour time slot.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, they added songs too, which the
That
songs
too.
obviously weren't going to be in the book.
yeah.
The songs were iconic too.
Oh, very
Yes.
much.
Very much.
I would say too, like, and I guess I've never really noticed, but Googling up the Grinch and the way he looks in the movie versus the way he looks in the book. There's the shot of where he smiles, like, you know, his hair parts down the middle and then he does this really crazy smile.
Hmm.
Reminds me of like Gossamer and stuff like that from Chuck Jones. So
Mm.
yeah, I never
Oh,
gave
yeah.
that any thought, but looking at that picture, it's like, oh my God, it's totally Chuck Jones. Like the
Yeah.
stuff that he would do.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I didn't think about that until you said it.
Kind of that deranged, like just insane smile.
Hmm.
Like good deranged, but still.
And now that we're talking about it, I know we're not to the sequels yet, but like when I was watching the sequels, I was like, they really changed the look of everything. But I'm kind of thinking the sequels are closer to the book than the original was in terms of the style, like the shape of the Grinch and his face.
Sure.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Like it's still different, but it's closer to the book, I think.
Absolutely. I'd even say, and I know we're not talking about it in this episode, but the DreamWorks or the Illumination Grinch has quite a bit more look like it looks quite a lot more like the book Grinch than what this
Yeah,
special does.
yeah, it does. One thing that I was surprised looking up the voice cast, June Foray was Cindy Lou Who.
She was kind of like in everything back then.
True, but I just never would have even thought of her as the tiny Who child.
She was a talent.
It's also interesting. She looks kind of different in the book. Like I feel like, and I don't know, like the illustrations are not exactly consistent, but like the scene where she wakes up in the middle of the night, she looks, well, I read that Dr. Seuss and his wife argued about whether the Who's were humans or insects, and she looks very insect-like in the scene where she wakes up in the book. Like she actually has antenna, and then when I watched it again, I realized she has antenna in the animation too, but she also has hair, which I had never noticed before.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, I was like a little bit. I think for like the longest time, I thought like she was like some sort of like an alien. Like I think she confused me as to what exactly the Who's were.
I could totally see that as an alien.
Yeah, but yeah, I also like because I read the book as a kid and I noticed the design difference, and I was like, I'm like she looks human here, and then like kind of bug alien like here, but.
Hmm.
I don't know, cute at least in both, just when one looks slightly less human.
It's probably partially to do with the fact that the Who's, I think they originated in the book Horton Hears a Who, which I was more familiar with
Correct.
as a
Yeah.
kid. And they're like minuscule. Like I think in that book they live on a speck of dust. Like it's an entire world on a speck of dust.
On a like a dandelion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something, yeah.
I think too in the Jim Carrey 2000s movie,
Mhm.
they actually live on a snowflake.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know if that's what that was his thinking for designing them semi-insect like or not.
So if this takes place in the same universe, imagine how small the Grinch is.
Well, speaking of Grinch size, I also did not realize if you look at the illustrations where he's standing next to the Who's, because most of the illustrations, the Who's and the Grinch are not drawn side by side, but in the few that they are, the Grinch towers over the Who's.
Mm.
He is a completely different species. He is monstrous compared to the Who's.
He's a Grinch.
Yes.
Which, like, I think it's because I'm too familiar with the Jim Carrey version where they're just basically the same species, but he's like mutated and green or
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
I just, it never occurred to me that they were two different species. I just thought he was a weird green who.
I only saw that once.
Yeah, but in the illustrations, he's something else entirely. He's huge.
I would just assumed he was kind of like that Bigfoot or whatever monster that lives on top of the hill kind of a deal.
He probably is. But he also, another thing that I read while I was researching, Dr. Seuss based him on himself.
Mhm.
He
Really?
he felt like the Grinch about Christmas. Like the whole thing was he was like he saw Christmas as being too commercial. He was very anti, probably not anti-consumerism, but anti-stuff. Like he thought Christmas was too much about stuff, and he just felt like the Grinch. And he kind of wrote himself into the story.
Huh.
But you think about it, I think a lot of authors do that. Like you find that character. I mean, they always say to write what you know. And if that was where he started with that, and those were his beliefs, I could see making an analog of yourself in that form.
There's a very good biography if anyone's interested called Becoming Dr. Seuss, written by Brian J. Jones, and it's just about his life and his career, and he goes through a lot of behind the scenes on a lot of the books. And I think there was a good chunk that was about this book, how the Grinch Stole Christmas, as well as when the short was being made. And I really enjoyed the book, so I recommend it to anyone listening who wants to read it.
Well, that sounds incredible. Because anyone that can write the characters that he writes and the way that he writes them has to be an incredibly interesting individual.
It was a very interesting biography, I'll say that.
Nice. Appreciate the suggestion.
You're welcome. They're totally not paying me for this.
Although Audible, if you're listening, how about it?
Yes.
Well, I guess we could go back to the voice cast.
One of the classic icons of or Universal horror movies, which was surprising.
Yeah, like when you first hear about it, it is a surprising thing, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Boris Karloff, for those who are listening.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's like the voice of not Frosty. It was the voice of Frosty, I think. Started a really terrible horror movie called Microwave Massacre.
Who was the voice of Frosty?
Hang on, I'm gonna look it up
Was
quick.
it was that comedians something? Jack something? Jackie Vernon?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, this guy, oh my God. Microwave Massacre is quite an interesting movie, and the fact that Jackie Vernon, like this voice of like children's television or children's Christmas classic of a Christmas classic, starred in this movie it caught me off guard. But that's neither here nor there. So, and not on subject at all. So I apologize.
At least Boris Karloff didn't do anything horror related.
Oh no, well this is Halloween or Microwave Massacre is on par with some of the Santa movies that I've thrown towards Jonathan. So it's more on the realm of like weird what the heck were they thinking when they made this movie level B movies.
I see.
So out of the 80s of all times.
Well, again, not to skip too far ahead to the sequels, but there was some stuff in the sequels that reminded me of the tech from some of those Santa movies.
You're not
Like
wrong.
spying on the children.
But those are those are done with a certain amount of cheeky imagination towards children. Microwave Massacre is not a children's movie in any way, shape, or form, besides there being a giant microwave that a man uses to reheat cannibalistic bits of victims. That's a different story though. Cut that if you need to.
I think the Grinch
Yeah.
podcast has gone off the
if,
rails.
yeah.
Well, you're gonna get that when you have me on. You know that. I apologize. Yeah. Oof. Sorry.
Rest in
Current-
peace, the Grinch podcast. We tried.
It was a good
Current-
attempt. We tried.
We'll regroup tomorrow.
Exactly. Just start the whole thing over. Welcome to the Grinch podcast. We're here to talk about the fantastic original Grinch movie from the Grinch special from the 60s and its subsequent sequels, which are in their own way, shape, and form quite interesting and not at all creepy.
Are they not creepy though?
That second one,
I'm so glad I did not watch the Halloween one as a kid. Because, like, that would have traumatized me.
I was watching it, I was like, who is this for?
That is actually a really good question. And well, you know, with any bit of media, it's always a good thing to question that. Like old or new media, who was this made for? Was it made for kids? Was it made for adults? Was it like family oriented? Was it a weird mishmash of all of the above? Yeah, the Halloween one specifically was, I don't know how to explain that, but we'll get to it.
I mean, we probably can just skip around because I wasn't really planning on going through these like scene by scene because, well, for the Grinch, everybody knows the story of the Grinch and it's kind of self-explanatory. I mainly just wanted to talk about them just in terms of how familiar we are with them and maybe what like memories of them. Because most people, other than me and apparently Mark, grew up with the Grinch. So it's kind of strange that I never did. But I mean, I'll have a different podcast for this one. But like, I grew up with the Jim Carrey version. For whatever reason, I don't know why that was so popular in my house, but my brothers kept, I think, I don't remember if it was taped off the TV or borrowed from the library, but that one was just played all the time, quoted endlessly, the Jim Carrey version. And we hardly ever watched this one, the normal one. So I have almost no childhood memories of the actual Grinch. So I thought it would be more interesting to talk about it with people who did.
yeah.
I mean, for myself, you know, Grinch, the 60s Grinch was a staple of Christmas. Not the book actually, which is weird, but I never like I had a couple of the books, but it wasn't ever really a thing. My first introduction to Seuss as well as the Grinch was the special.
Oh, that was the introduction to Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I probably read a couple of the books as a kid, but this is my earliest memory of Dr. Seuss, I guess.
Mm.
Or maybe just the one that stands out the most over the course of time. But yeah, I mean, the Grinch was always just there. It was never a thing where it wasn't. So I guess it was always something that I enjoyed. It was a staple. It wasn't really a question. So
Yeah, for me, I was a big fan of the Dr. Seuss book growing up. I did read a lot of them as a kid, and like I said before, the this special, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, I never watched at all as a kid. I think multiple reasons. One, I don't celebrate Christmas, so I think that's one reason. So I'm not like looking forward to multiple different types of Christmas specials to watch every year. And two, I used to only watch PBS, and that would not show on PBS, so I didn't really have access to it. And for some, I would get all my stuff from the library, like on video or whatnot. And I don't think we had How the Grinch Stole Christmas on VHS there, so I never saw it until I think the first time I saw it was maybe 6, 7 years ago. And this is actually the second time I've seen it. I'm watching it now for this podcast, so I don't have any nostalgia for this. I do think it's a good adaptation of the book. I mean, it does what it needs to do in half an hour. I don't think it's like my favorite of the Dr. Seuss specials. I grew up a lot with the Cat in the Hat special. That's one like I could like if you're doing a podcast on that, Jonathan, I'll definitely be up for that one. That one I could quote that like from beginning to end. That and like the Sneetches.
I had actually thought about doing different Dr. Seuss things for
Uh,
the podcast. But the one I grew up with, not really me. I think it was more my younger brothers, but I watched a bunch because they kept, I think maybe one of them owned it. I don't remember. We had a basement flood and I don't know what happened to all the VHSs, but we had Horton Hatches the Egg. We watched that a bunch.
hmm,
So that's the one I'm most familiar with. I don't know that we even had any books. We might have had Green Eggs and Ham, and I don't think we had any of the other books. I probably borrowed some from the library, but never repeatedly. So I didn't really grow up with much Dr. Seuss.
hmm.
I was always aware of him and I would read them here and there. Like if somebody else had one and I was at their house, then I would read it. But like it wasn't something that I was obsessed with. Like my favorite, as a child, my favorite author was Bill Peet, who I later found out was a Disney artist.
Wow.
What did he write? Like novelizations of the movies?
No, he was a children's book author too, but he wrote,
Oh, okay.
there was one called The Wingding Dilly about this crazy mixed up creature
Wing Ding
thing.
Dilly.
Yeah. No, he had a lot. My favorites were his books. It was just supposed to be like I don't know if you would call it like a scientific journal or it was like rhyming too, so I don't know, but it was just talking about various made up animals that he invented. And that was like one of my favorite things, reading his books of made up animals. Most of his books are out of print because I wanted to buy them for my nephews and they were like $60 for one book. And I was like, oh, I can't afford that.
Oof.
But yeah, anyways, Dr. Seuss. Most people had all tons of his books, read them all the time. I didn't. It was kind of weird that my most familiar thing with him was a special about an elephant hatching a bird mutant.
Isn't that Dr. Seuss generally everything is kind of mutated from what's like the norm?
Yeah, kind of. Even his supposedly normal creatures, like the cat in the hat, it does not look like a cat.
No,
Definitely not.
the Lorax perplexed me as a kid, but
Hmm.
I was thinking back on it, and when the Lorax movie, the Illumination Lorax came out, I think I was in second grade, if I'm recalling correctly.
Oh, I feel old.
So my second grade teacher organized us all to take it because she had read us like the book and we did projects on like saving the trees and stuff. And I was so obsessed with this movie that for my birthday, my mom made me a Lorax cake.
Aw.
That's
I
nice.
know, and it's just so funny thinking back on like how obsessed I was because I didn't know what he was, and it drove me a little insane that I couldn't figure out what the Lorax was. Like the Cat in the Hat was like a cat, and then they had a
Yeah.
bunch of fish characters, and sure the fish looked like mutants of cats and fish, but it's fine. But the Lorax, like I don't know, I had an emotional attachment to the little orange dude, and I did enjoy the 25-minute animated short that adapted the
Mhm.
Lorax book. I don't remember what year they made it, but that was what got me like really into Dr. Seuss, I think, was like that short. And then the Grinch, the old animated Grinch, that I also was like I did not want to watch the Jim Carrey one for like the longest time. My family always wanted to watch it around Christmas time, but I always insisted that we record the animated one because
Nice.
I preferred it so much over the Jim Carrey one. And then I grew up and I realized that the reason why I probably preferred it was because I just didn't get a lot of the jokes that were being said in that movie. They were going straight over my head.
No, I'm with you. I think the animation one's way better.
Yeah. So I had like elementary school, I think I had like a fascination with like the art style of Dr. Seuss. I think it would be safe to say.
He does have a very unique and
Yeah.
recognizable style.
He does.
Like here in I live in Orlando, so I go to the theme parks every now and then. And in Universal Studios here, we have a Dr. Seuss land, and everything is designed like Dr. Seuss. All the buildings and all the designs, the artwork is just like if Dr. Seuss himself did it, and it's like you could tell it's just so unique in his style.
His book, Oh, the Places You'll Go, is like something something like your relative gives to you when you graduate
Yeah.
Hmm.
elementary school, middle school, high school, and college. Like my
So
parents never got me it because they said it was like cliche. And when I was like in fifth grade, I'm like, I want the book.
Aw.
But they're like, no, you get a yearbook.
I remember my cousin getting it when she graduated, and I was confused. I don't think I'd ever read it, and nobody gave it to me. I'm not sure if I've even ever read it myself.
I've read it. I don't own it.
It's just so funny how like in some ways the Places You'll Go book was almost substituting for like kids' yearbooks because everybody was just signing that book.
I think maybe she did that at her graduation party too. I think they had a table set up that you could sign the book.
Hmm.
You're unlocking a long forgotten memory.
Yeah. Yeah. And then somewhere on Facebook is a bunch of posts of that party or like my fifth grade graduation, just a bunch of moms saying, oh, the places they'll go or whatever, like 15 million times. And everyone being like, oh, they're so cute. I'm pretty sure my mom did that too. Even though we didn't have the book, she would constantly always say on Facebook after like me and my brother graduated something, oh, the places you'll go. It's just, I don't know if people do it anymore because, like, honestly, my mom's a fifth grade teacher and, like, kids don't really talk about Dr. Seuss anymore. Like, she used to teach first grade too. So I know this because I've interacted with these kids and they don't really know Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, I don't think
Hmm.
his books are read as much as like the other generations were. I know a lot of schools still celebrate. I think March 2nd is his birthday, and I think that's like Dr. Seuss Day. So a lot of schools, I think, still dress up like Dr. Seuss characters on
Yeah,
those days and whatnot.
yeah.
I know my sister-in-law does stuff with my nephews. They homeschool, so she has like all of their birthdays are themed around different things. A lot of times it's a book,
Mm.
and Dr. Seuss is a favorite. I know she posts something on Dr. Seuss Day, like they make a cake or whatever. So, well, I mean, they're homeschooled, so it's not exactly like a public school thing, but some kids
Yeah.
like Dr. Seuss. Probably because I suppose my sister-in-law grew up with Dr. Seuss, and now she's doing it with her kids. So it probably depends on the parents.
Yeah, I feel like if you grew up with it, you're gonna grow your kids up with it too.
100%.
Like when I was younger, I know when I say younger, like maybe in my teens, my goal, I wanted to read every Dr. Seuss book that he wrote. I think I did complete it. I don't remember.
Think I tried to do that too at one
Mhm.
point because I have so many. And a lot
Nice.
of them are like Cat in the Hat variation books, but I remember I read Dr. Seuss for like a while, probably longer than like most kids normally would because you like eventually age out of that reading. But I just really enjoyed his writing and his art, so I would constantly pick them up in the library.
Oh yeah, same.
I even remember when I was young, I got like a Cat in the Hat book, but it was like you wrote your own adventure or something like that in the book. It's at home. I'll have to like find it whenever I go back home in like 3 days.
Oh,
But
I don't think I know that one.
yeah, it has like a yellow cover. And I just remember there's a bunch of questions inside about like yourself and then like if you were like a character in a Dr. Seuss book, like what would you be like? Something like that. I'll have to find it.
That sounds cool.
Well, one more voice that I wanted to make sure to mention was the
Oh yeah, back
singer.
to this.
Thurl Ravenscroft did the song, the main Grinch song. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. He keeps coming up on my podcast, but I'm doing a lot of stuff around his era. But I think it's funny that a lot of people don't realize that he was also the voice of Tony the Tiger for Frosted Flakes.
Bit of a tangent, but have any of you seen the movie on Frosted that Jerry Seinfeld made?
No, it's on my watch list.
I saw some stills, but I haven't actually seen it.
I like it a lot, but it's kind of it's like a fake retelling of the cereal wars between the Post Company and General Mills Company about making the Pop Tart. But anyway, Thurl Ravenscroft is one of the characters, and she played by Hugh Grant.
Really?
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
you got to see the movie just for that.
I definitely should. That's hilarious. Oh, I had no idea. I knew about the movie. I saw some pictures. I knew there was like a giant Pop-Tart mascot costume.
Yeah, yeah.
That's about all I knew about the movie.
No, it's a real. I know it got a lot of bad reviews, but like I really liked it. I thought it was really funny. But just keep in mind, it's like a fake true story.
Yeah, I knew it was fake.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a giant Pop-Tart person, so that didn't seem historically accurate. I definitely want to see it now just for Thurl Ravenscroft as an actual character in a movie.
Definitely, this might be this. I could be wrong, but I think this is probably the first time he's ever been played by anybody in a movie or TV show.
Probably.
I would assume
Interesting.
so.
But yeah, he wasn't credited in the How the Grinch Stole Christmas special, and I think Dr. Seuss afterwards like wrote him letters of like apologies for that, and tried to get the word out there that oh yeah, it was him who sung the song, it wasn't Boris Karloff.
Yeah, for a long time, I always just thought Boris Karloff did it, but that was before I was familiar with Thurl Ravenscroft, because everybody always talks about Boris Karloff as the Grinch.
Mhm.
So I just assumed that he sang the song too. I think a lot of people assume that, but no, it was Tony the Tiger.
Tony,
That's great.
I get the reference.
Yay.
Well, other than the song, I think my favorite part of this special is the faces that the Grinch makes. Like
When
when
he has
he's
an
getting
awful
his
idea.
awful ideas. The way his face is animated and the huge evil smile that creeps up on his face. I just love that.
It is very well done.
Yeah. It was one of those scenes where it was like so Looney Tunes. Just everything about that style was just perfect for this.
It's like the best GIF too.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It covers so many experience or so many different scenarios in life.
It
Very
does.
much.
I was surprised by because I haven't watched this in a while. So I was surprised the animation I kind of like I was like, yeah, this holds up to like what I actually thought it was going to be. I enjoyed the animation of this one better than the other two. And I
Oh,
feel like that's just
definitely.
because
Hmm.
Yeah.
this one seems like it definitely got more budget.
Mhm.
Yes.
More
Just
care.
Yeah.
yeah, more care, like just in the movements and how they draw the Grinch, because how they draw the Grinch differs between like the three of them,
It's
and
different in all three. It's yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so this one, the Christmas one, is obviously the best drawn Grinch, and it's just like it was so fluid. It was like it was yeah, so Looney Tunes, and
Hmm.
it was perfect. And I'm like, we need more Christmas specials like this.
We do.
Who's the Chuck Jones of the today?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if there is one. Like there are people who do Looney Tunes cartoons today, but I don't know that anyone ever has really stood out as
Stood out
like,
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think there are specials that have stood the test of time more recently, but yeah, there's the classics are classics for a reason.
yeah.
Very true.
Some of it's nostalgia and some of it's just because they're that good.
This one is both.
Oh yeah.
Even just for the song. The song is iconic.
Yeah, everyone knows
Yeah.
the song, even outside. Like I knew the song before
Yeah.
I even saw the short.
I also liked the just like the opening song
Oh yeah,
of
yeah.
it too.
Yes.
Little chant, like I liked that too.
It was like perfectly encapsulating that era of Christmas.
Yes, yes. I mean, I wasn't around to see it airing, but yes.
Well, I don't think any of us were, but
Jonathan speaking from experience. He's like, back in my day.
of the Christmas media that I've seen, this seems to perfectly encapsulate that era.
Yeah, it's just funny how like people from different eras can watch it, but we all will be like, that's what Christmas felt like back then.
Hmm.
Well, I think too that the it's like the Twilight Zone or any of that stuff. The best media transcends time.
Yeah.
It's
It's
as
timeless,
relevant,
yeah.
yeah, as relevant now as it was when it came out. And you could have brought it out 20 years before or, 40 years later, and it's still going to have the same message.
And impact.
Yeah, 100%.
Hmm.
I think one of my criticisms of this short is I think Boris Karloff does a great job as the narrator. I don't think his voice fits very well when he's actually voicing the Grinch talking. To me, I don't know if it's because he's still delivering his lines in a narrator sort of way, so it doesn't really match like the lip movements of the Grinch. But every time I hear his voice when the Grinch is actually moving his lips, it doesn't seem to me, it just seems off to me. I might be the only one.
Well, and I mean, the idea is as valid as anything else, and what you hear is going to be different than what someone else hears. So, yeah, no, absolutely, that's fair. That's a fair criticism.
It probably has to do with the fact that if he's narrating, then it almost seems like the Grinch is sort of lip syncing to the narrator.
Yeah.
So if you're too focused on that, then it would seem off.
So like I kind of wish it was full narration and the Grinch we never actually see him moving his lips to anything.
That was one thing that I noticed about the book. Like the Grinch does talk some in the book, but I noticed between the special and the book, they changed a lot of the narration of the book into lines for the Grinch to say.
Mm.
It might have been a thing at that time as well, just like to have a
Probably.
completely passive experience
Yeah.
as an audience member.
It probably would have been a little off. Like I'm sure they thought it made for a better show to have the Grinch actually speaking more. But if you're like paying attention more to the book and more familiar with the book, it probably will seem a little weird. But I wasn't that familiar, so I didn't notice until I was like going through the special with the book and looking at all the differences. And then I noticed that the Grinch had more speaking lines in the movie than the book.
I think of like all of the Grinch voices. I'm thinking like the Illumination one too. The classic is still my favorite.
Hmm.
I
Mhm.
didn't totally, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I didn't totally vibe with the other two voice actors that played the Grinch. I think it's just because they just sounded a little bit like older and they gave him like grumpy old man vibes, which I don't know. Like the Grinch does look old and he probably is a grumpy old man. Like I don't know how old he is. I don't know Grinch lore, but like,
I mean, in the book, it's like 53 years, and I believe let me check to make sure, but I believe that was on purpose because I think that was how old Dr. Seuss was when he wrote it
uh,
because he was writing himself as the Grinch.
do you think after he wrote it, like the Christmas ghosts of the past, present, future visited him and were like, "You're being a Scrooge right now by writing this."
Ooh, a Dr. Seuss Christmas Carol. Now I want that.
That could be interesting.
Yeah, Grinch would play Scrooge, of course.
I'll go pitch it, and then they'll make it all in CGI, and it'll look terrible.
Oh yes, we gotta go to a hand-drawn studio.
Let's kickstart this thing.
Well, I looked it up. It was 53 years. So the Grinch has been glowering over Whoville for 53 years, hating Christmas.
Well, good for him. Being a hater for 53 years is hard.
Yeah, he's steady. He kept at it. There's a lesson in perseverance there.
I know you get into your 70s and you start to, not be able to do as much, but if we're talking grumpy old Grinch man, I would assume closer to 70 than 50.
Well, it depends, I guess, on the lifespan of a Grinch.
That is true. That raises quite a few
Yes,
philosophical questions about the ins and outs of how a Grinch operates, really.
yes.
But I don't know that we really want to go into those specifics because then you're making assumptions about him and his kind, and we really don't have a lot of information to go on.
We might
So
get some letters from the Grinches around the world. So sorry, Jonathan.
we definitely don't want to bring that to John's podcast because that would be bad.
Well,
Angry.
we know at least they give us some information about their biology because they have hearts that can change sizes.
Grow. Yes, grow and shrink.
Also, I'm just gonna say what happens in the mean one. But I love, oh God, it's like I'm sure it's probably a question that's been raised by multiple individuals over the span of the life of the Grinch generally, and I'm glad that the question was finally answered. So I'm happy about that because it kept me awake nights.
The heart mystery.
Yes. Is it 2.5 times larger? Is it 3.25% larger? Hmm.
Math.
Yes,
And then when he gets a larger heart, he also gets like super duper strong. So
that's
maybe we
right.
should all enlarge our hearts and then we can get strong.
I
That's
think
the
that's
lesson.
actually a disease, though. Like if you have an
Yeah,
enlarged
no,
heart,
it
generally
is.
speaking.
It is.
There
It
you go.
can kill you.
Christmas gave the Grinch a heart attack eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just the Christmas bonbons either.
I
Exactly.
think it's like there's actually I remember way back in like middle and high school biology classes, they would teach you about this effect on the body where it's like when your body, like if you break a limb for like an hour or so, you might not feel it because there's so much adrenaline that your body's shutting off the pain receptors so you can survive. That's what happened to the Grinch.
Well,
Like,
after the credits roll, he just collapsed
yeah, he
at
just
that dinner table.
collapses. Eventually he feels the pain like his arms and legs and that he like overexerted, but not in that moment because he had too much adrenaline.
That's
Who
right.
And the Who's had a great grand funeral for the Grinch on Christmas Day. There's a sequel that Dr. Seuss wanted.
They buried him with baubles, tags, and bags.
Oh no.
They buried him with the last can of Who Hash.
Well, there is actually a sequel, not written by Dr. Seuss himself, but authorized by Dr. Seuss's estate. And in the sequel, his heart shrinks again because he the sequel book is dumb. I bought it because I thought maybe it would be relevant, but it has nothing to do with either of the sequels.
What's it called?
It's called How the Grinch Lost Christmas.
Because
Yes,
this
it's a
was
book.
one that we definitely needed.
I've never heard of this before. Well, this was published last year.
Oh my gosh. This, no one read this, but I do remember this cover.
Oh dear God. You know what? I've already got hives from unnecessary sequels.
Okay, when I go to the library next time, I know what I'm getting.
The Grinch looks like an angry teenager.
Well, the book is about the Grinch wanting to prove that he's changed. So he's entering a Christmas contest or a Christmas tree contest
Uh,
to decorate the biggest Christmas tree. The
no.
rhyming is close to Dr. Seuss. It almost feels like Dr. Seuss, but it's off. And I feel like I would need to read it a couple more times to like fully figure out why, but it feels like they missed the point of the story. And like the whole thing is about him doing this contest to prove that he's changed. And then he ends up losing to Cindy Lou Who, and then throwing a fit and marching back up the mountain. And then she calls out to him like her tree was decorated with an ornament from everyone in town, and she has space for one more. And then he's sorry that he threw a fit and he comes back down and his heart grows again. Because when he lost the contest, his heart shrank.
Interesting.
That sounds quite petty.
Well, technically,
I
I
mean,
guess
he's
the
a
Grinch
Grinch.
is pretty petty.
Point taken.
I don't know. I felt like there is potential for something else in this world, but it didn't need to happen. And the story just felt off somehow. Probably because it wasn't written by Dr. Seuss himself.
I could see Illumination making a sequel to their movie if it had been
This does feel like
more.
something that Illumination would do,
Mhm.
actually. Maybe they still
Yeah.
will.
I mean, we got 4 Despicable Me movies,
And
so
two Minions
yeah.
is was it three? Three Minions is.
Oh
I
God,
lost track.
really?
Wait,
I
Is
lost
there
track.
three
I thought
Minion
it was,
movies?
Is it two or three?
I think it's two.
Let me check.
I don't
It's
know.
gonna bother me again.
You
We
know,
don't talk about Minion.
when the Despicable Me 4 trailer came out, my friend sent it to one of our group chats, and I'm like, I already saw this movie, and they're like, Carmen, no, this is a new movie, and I'm like, I watched the trailer, and I'm like, I literally could have sworn to you on my life that I watched this movie because it looks like the same formula and everything, and I'm like, I could have sworn you there was already 4 of these, and I saw this like.
Okay, it's only two Minions
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
for now.
Oh, when I looked up the book, The Grinch Lost Christmas, it's funny, a headline popped up saying, "We regret that the Grinch appears to have lost Christmas in a forthcoming sequel."
Well, don't worry. By the end, he regrets his actions, his heart grows again, and he finds Christmas.
I'm glad he learned that lesson the second time.
Sometimes people need multiple times to learn lessons like that.
That's true.
That is technically true.
That's a big lesson to have to learn twice. I'm just saying.
Maybe it should have been the Grinch sees a therapist and then
No, we stick to Christmas trees. It's all about the Christmas trees, and
Grinch
you know.
sees the Christmas therapist.
There you
I
go.
fixed it.
Now I'm just imagining one of the little insect who's with a giant Grinch lying on a giant couch with a tiny little Who therapist writing notes next to him.
Yeah, it's basically Jiminy Cricket.
Kind of.
We are describing the intro scene of the Grinch 2 trailer from Illumination.
There you go.
There you go. I like it.
And we thought of it first, so
That's right, gosh darn it.
send the royalties this way.
Yeah.
Well, does anyone have any final thoughts on the actual Grinch movie before we talk about the sequels?
10 out of 10.
Nice.
It's excellent.
Yes.
It holds up like a lot of stuff from the 60s. Like the Batman series from the 60s. It holds up.
Speaking of which,
Exactly. No, it's fantastic. It's very well done, and yeah, no complaints.
I remember for whatever reason, I wasn't that fond of it when I watched this the first time a few years ago. I thought it was a little overrated. I'm not 100% sure why, but upon this rewatch, I say, no, it is actually a pretty good film. I don't know why I didn't think that before. I wouldn't say it's like, oh, I'm gonna watch this like every year, but it's between the buckets of good and bad, this is definitely a good one.
I will say this, and I think it's generally to, well, of just anything really. It's like Christmas Story. You watch that, like at least as a kid, if you watch it, you grow up with it, and I use the Christmas Story specifically because that's what I have as an example. I talk to people that watch it for the first time as an adult, and that's not the sentiment. It's very much it's fine. It's mediocre. It covers the bills of Christmas stuff, but it's really not that great. Just that difference in when you saw it, the
Mhm.
nostalgia that you attach to it, I think with all that stuff plays quite a big role, especially when you're talking Christmas stuff.
Well, moving on to the sequels.
One down, two to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Halloween is Grinch Night.
I don't remember for sure, but I think I this was the first of the three specials that I saw in my life. So I think this was probably my introduction to Grinch in animated form. I'm not 100% sure.
How did that happen?
I think I was on YouTube one day and I'm looking through like just Google, there was like the random Dr. Seuss specials that were available because at the time no one had uploaded how the Grinch Stole Christmas. I think that one had like a big copyright, so that would always get taken down if anyone uploaded it. But these somehow got through, so I just kind of watched all that was available, and this was one of them.
I'm so sorry.
I don't dislike it. It's interesting.
It is that's a good way to state it.
So like what Carmen was mentioning earlier about the voice, I didn't really have a problem with Hans Conried voicing the Grinch. I kind of think it kind of works for me. I could see Hans Conried voicing the Grinch and like the voice fits. Because remember, I still had that issue with Boris Karloff voicing the Grinch when he's actually saying stuff. So it didn't really stand out to me too much in this version with Hans Conried.
Maybe that's why you didn't like the Grinch in the first one, because you saw this one first.
That doesn't sound like Hans Connery.
I just thought this thing was bizarre.
Watching this one for the first time was a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did enjoy when gosh, the grandpa was Josiah, the kid was
And Grandpa Josiah said, Nicaraya says, Grandpa
Nicaraya.
Josiah said, and just keeps going.
He goes off and says that he needs to go use the euphemism.
Yes,
That,
that was
that
the
was the
best part.
one part that made me laugh out loud when the kid said he had to go use the euphemism.
He had to go to the euphemism, yeah.
And then that's repeated throughout. I
And the,
also
and the grandpa's like, you don't go to the euphemism when it's nice like this.
And I was like, why? What do you do then?
There's a bucket.
I mean, yeah, it's either like go in a bucket or be blown away.
Yep.
Yeah, take your pick.
Yeah.
But also when he said that, I'm like, what is he talking about? And then I realized, but I literally like I Googled the Wikipedia term because I'm just like, this is something I have never heard used ever.
I'm pretty sure that
Wikipedia.
nobody has used that previous term or that term ever.
I think that's part of the joke, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I also did look up because I'm a weirdo. 1977 was when this came out. When Grandpa Josiah talks about not opening the door for $1.50 or $2.50 or six
hmm
sixty or 60 60. $1.50 is equal to 7.54 in modern day American currency. 250 is $12.57. 660 is $33.19. And 60 is $304.70, if you wanted to know.
Which brings the question that I have for everyone. Like, how bad does a night have to be for you not to go out if someone offers you $66,600,000 and an extra 66 cents?
I mean, how far
Like,
outside are we
$20 and I would
talking?
walk out.
that,
How far out the door are we talking? Are we
I
talking like a foot, whole body,
I
just
don't know.
head?
let's say a few feet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll do it. I need the $66 million.
As long as I can have a flashlight, sure.
I don't need a flashlight. You just need to promise me 20 bucks and I will be out that door.
Carmen's like, $20, I got this.
My question is, where did the idea for this come from? Like,
Drugs.
who watched the original Grinch and thought, you know what this needs? A prequel where the Grinch is called in to cause terror during a storm.
I'm
I,
assuming
Yeah.
drugs.
that's usually a good answer in the 70s.
I suppose, but I'm still questioning like how it got all the way to production stage.
I guess someone wanted to make a Halloween special and they thought, hey, what's a good Dr. Seuss scary character? Like, oh, maybe the Grinch, and I guess they just went from there. But the weird thing is, the word Halloween isn't mentioned at all at once in this
Mm-mm.
special.
Yeah.
Well, I read that they changed the name at some point later on.
Yeah, for some releases, yeah.
I should have paid attention to my DVD. I can't remember what the title was on the DVD.
But I would sort of imagine too that like because well, I suppose they celebrate Christmas. So in theory, like the Whoville would celebrate Halloween as well, but I don't know.
I guess how the Grinch stole Easter wasn't
Yeah.
bank-worthy.
Well, they tried it with the Peanuts and the Peanuts characters and it just didn't quite work.
The whole thing just felt like, I don't know, a fever dream.
Yeah.
Like it's so many random things. Like,
I think that's kind of like what it was supposed to be, I guess.
I don't know, it just felt like somebody had a weird idea and wrote it down and nobody did any rewrites. It was just like, put this into production.
Yes, sir.
Like, what is this? Oh well, I don't get paid to ask questions. I'll just do it.
I mean, not to get too blasé about it, I think a lot of specials from this time, just generally, like, you have like your main one and then you bring out multiple
Mhm.
ones after that. I think that they just kind of, well, the Grinch is popular. Let's toss him on this. We'll call it a day. I mean, look at how many weird Peanut specials there are, and they're not necessarily 70s per se,
Yeah.
but they are still cranked. I mean, how many properties even today is that done with where it's like, oh, well, it worked here and people, if we attach whatever thing to it, people will go see it. I think not necessarily as cynical as it is today. I do think does still, I think it affected it then as much as it does now.
I think part of it too is like as the cool kids, young kids nowadays say making content. I guess it was
Yeah.
done to actually fill in time in on these TV broadcasts.
That is a very good way to see it.
Yeah, probably.
It did feel like, I guess, oddly paced. Like when it ended, I didn't really feel like much had happened.
Oh yeah, it was very
Oh,
anticlimactic.
yeah.
The storm just
It
ended.
just, yeah, it just ended. It's like the Grinch was like, "Oh, the wind is gone. I must go back up the mountain." And also, I didn't like how they portrayed the Grinch in this one because the Grinch is the Grinch, yeah, and Max is well taken care of, even if he is exploited a little bit. There was like that
Mhm.
fine balance between the Grinch clearly loves Max, but also maybe overworks him a little bit. In this one, he just kind of just abuses Max
Yeah,
I
to
like
the
thought
that.
point
that
where
too.
Max ditches the Grinch and leaves.
The way, yeah, it ended with him leaving, and this is supposed to be a prequel, so he must go back to him at some point.
Maybe it's like a multiverse and this is a different Grinch.
But possibly.
This is not canon. This is not my Grinch. I just
Hashtag not my
Hashtag not
Grinch.
my Grinch.
it made me mad because I'm like I feel like the Grinch like would draw a line at like doing this to his own dog, like I don't know.
I mean, he made his dog carry a gigantic sleigh of packages up a giant hill. But no, agreed. I think that I don't know. Like there's that long-suffering side character that,
Mhm.
always gets the comeuppance. I mean, and not knowing, I don't think Max was based on like the Great Race, but there are obviously connections to those characters too. So
Mm.
yeah, it got a little weird quick. And like you say, there's not a lot that happened. There was a story, but there really wasn't a story. You have the whole song about Max and his auntie.
The Max song is pretty sad.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, it didn't really connect. It sort of connected,
Oh
but it
yeah.
didn't really, like, there wasn't a point. It's like, oh, okay, here's this really sad song. And then at the end, he gets picked up by the kid. But then in between that, there's not really anything that would, you know, move that story along.
It's just there just because.
Yeah, 100%. That's what this sequel or prequel or whatever the heck it is.
Mhm.
Is just, oh, well, we're gonna do this. Oh, he's covered in brambles. He's gonna complain about it for a bit. Oh, he's gonna do this. Gonna do that. Whatever. So,
It's one of those stories where things just happen and it doesn't seem like there's any reason for them to happen. They just happen. Like you have the whole chain of events at the beginning where the sour, sweet wind comes in, causes all this stuff to happen, which apparently calls the Grinch down to the town for Grinch Night, which everybody's terrified of. And then the whole episode is just him coming down the mountain, a little kid getting blown away, finding him, and by the end, the sour sweet wind dies down, and he doesn't even get to the town. He just leaves.
The kid doesn't even get to the euphemisms. I don't know. He's been holding it this whole half an hour.
I just assume he went under the bramble bush with the one of a kind wiggle wag or whatever the
yes.
heck it's called.
I mean, he got blown away. He probably had an accident while he was flying through the air.
I wasn't
That
expecting
wasn't
rain
rain.
tonight.
I did like the voice cast, though. Like I said, I didn't mind Hans Conried as the Grinch. I enjoyed Hal Smith was Uncle Josiah. Henry Gibson was the singer of the Max song, and the reason I recognize I thought his voice sounded familiar was, oh, he's the voice of Wilbur from the Charlotte's Web movie from the 70s as well. It's
Oh,
like,
that's
oh,
cool.
that's why I recognize that voice. And the voice of the general guy who was like giving updates on the Grinch's activities. I enjoy that too.
Which thank goodness for him. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known what was going on. The blinking lights you had to watch closely. For some reason, he gave me the character from the Flintstones. Not the Great Gizmo, the Great
Gazoo.
Kazoo.
Gazoo. Yeah, he gave me Great Gazoo vibes, and I think it's probably just like his headgear more than anything else. But
Mhm. And even the songs generally, I did enjoy them. I like not going out at night like this song. I like the Max song. I like that weird one in the middle with all those creatures.
and that is one thing too. The music of any of the Grinch pieces, is always strong. Like whatever the stories are, they you can always count on music.
Because I know that Dr. Seuss, he did the lyrics for this and the original, of course. And I think that's actually helps.
Part of me was just wondering if Dr. Seuss was sort of just there in name only because it felt like someone imitating his style rather than him himself.
I forget, I know I read the biography and then they talk about this, but I forget the details.
Well, I know he was involved somehow, but
Mhm.
to what degree, I don't know. Not that it's exactly the same, but it felt like weird fan fiction.
I guess the only other thing I had to say was both the Grinch and Gaston have a tendency to expectorate and
I
actually
thought that
know
too.
what the word means. So
I was like, oh, another animated thing that actually uses the I don't know if that's scientific word for spitting. Just like, that's very random. Like, you never hear that word anywhere else.
and he did it before Gaston, so
Ah,
he was
nice.
He was
original.
a trailblazer.
That's awesome. I also love that it was a great night for eyebrows, according to the Grinch.
Yes.
Yeah, that was weird.
I was going to say too, the songs, like, I don't know how much was collaborated between Dr. Seuss, but the songs were written by Joe Raposo, who was like the original writer for songs for Sesame Street.
Did he
So
do that one too, or was it just
he did both
the
Halloween is Grinch Night and the Grinch
and the Grinch?
Grinches
Oh,
the
okay.
Cat in the Hat.
Nice.
So they got some good talent there.
Very.
I mean, everybody has off days.
Yeah. But I think too that any of this
Not
stuff,
that the
we look
music was bad, but
no,
just the special in general was strange.
but I think we look back and you kind of hold like shows like just for example, Friz Freeling, we hold them to that standard of, oh, they're a master of what they do, but then they did, I mean, they got paid for their work. They did whatever jobs came along. That's just part of what they did. And they're
Hmm.
going to have the things that shine and the things that are, good and the things that are normal and the things that are kind of
Yeah.
every creator is going to have that. Every actor is going to have that. So,
Job's a job.
Exactly. Then and now.
I suppose we can move on to the Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat. I don't know which one was weirder, this one or the Halloween one.
This one you could definitely see probably had the least budget of the three.
But it felt like it had more of a story. Like there was a clear through line from open to close.
That is true. It did have a lot more story than the Halloween one. Like it actually had a point to it.
Yeah, I guess you have a point there.
I enjoyed the story of this one more, and I liked it more because it was funny. The Halloween one I didn't find super funny, so this one was funnier, and I like how the cat in the hat talked. Like it was just so absurd. And just he's so funny. Like it's hard to take him seriously. And it's nice in contrast to like the Grinch where he's just like so grumpy. It's funny to watch. And then the ending is so funny in my opinion. Remember your mother. And the Grinch is like, you're right. I'm sorry.
I don't want to jump to the end, but I will say that is to me, is the saddest song I've seen in anything animation related.
He sobbed a whole puddle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I would go to YouTube to listen to a song just to have a good cry.
It was also interesting to see because the Cat in the Hat is generally portrayed as pretty chill. Nothing really gets his goat. And his goat was really gotten in this one.
His goat was got.
Yes.
He did got that goat there.
He's got the goat good, eh?
Hey,
I
Hey.
can't blame him. If someone invented a machine that scrambles sound waves and make me sound like a cow, I think I would be mad too. Like
No, 100%.
also a sound wave scrambler, which is so absurd and so funny. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm like, I don't know. That's how it works, but all right.
Well, they also had a dark house, which is like the opposite of a lighthouse, where it spreads out a
Oh
beam of
yeah.
dark.
Okay. We don't even talk about that.
I do kind of like that as a concept. It was strange in this, but I feel like it could have potential in the right kind of a sci-fi story.
I think I was reading it was inspired by one of the later books where the cat in the hat mentions a flash dark rather than a flashlight.
Nice.
The Grinch of all people would be the one to have a dark
The dark
light, wouldn't
house.
he?
I think it did a good job of expand and not that you're going to get a lot of emotional depth from a character like the Grinch, but you did get a lot of depth as to who he was and kind of, where he came from as much as you can.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like we need to have the Grinch have a backstory. How about a mother?
The Grinch lore expands.
Yeah, expand the
He
Grinch lore.
he has a mom. He didn't just pop into existence.
Unless you go by the Jim Carrey movie, then that's up for grabs, but well, and there was some of the speculation that what he saw in the mirror was actually his dad.
Huh.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I mean, I could certainly see, because you're influenced by what came previously and the expectations that are put upon you. But maybe that's looking too deep into a simple story too.
Are you talking about like people theorizing about this special?
Yeah, that's what this special specifically, like when he looks in the mirror and he says good morning to his reflection, and the reflection tells him,
Oh, okay.
take the Grinch oath and all that stuff.
Okay.
That's in theory, that was his dad
I
because his
thought you were talking
mom
about
kind
his
of
mother.
offset. No, 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 sorry. That was apologies. I didn't mean to screw that up.
No, that makes sense for a theory. Like that's not what they said, but as a theory, that does make sense as to him being chastised for having a change of heart if his father was a Grinch like he used to be.
Mhm.
Imagine if their entire species, their like whole thing is just being a hater for like their entire life. Like just being grumpy, mad, angry all the time for their whole lifespan. I think they should make another movie. Grinch
Like
lore.
the Grinch too, the family reunion. It's like a Tigger
Exactly.
movie,
Yeah.
except
Yeah.
he realizes he's the only one.
Grinch 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I mean, give
Mhm.
Illumination enough time, and I bet they'll come up with something.
Very true.
Illumination knows how to milk a concept.
He'll come after Despicable Me 5 and Minions 3, though.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
I did have to laugh at the one when the Grinch is talking to the Cat in the Hat in front of his house about how he can change sounds and stuff. The rhyme he's able to make is hilarious. So he says, "The sounds that you make are the sounds of my choice. I can make you
Yeah, yeah,
sound
yeah.
better or make you sound moist."
Oh
Well,
yeah, I was like, I guess they really needed it to rhyme.
Yeah.
what
Rhyme at any cost.
there's kind of a precedent for that in Dr. Seuss because like in the book, the one line, let me see if I can find it because it's in the special too, the special and the book. When he's stealing all the stuff, he's on the roof and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley.
Point
So
taken.
there's precedent for weird forced rhymes in Dr. Seuss.
Hey, I'll take a weird forced rhyme over a near rhyme any day.
Point taken.
Actually, I probably would too, especially in something like this.
Like that Wonka movie that came out where when he rhymed chocolate with pocklet. I like that a lot.
All I'm going to say is that I will never call anyone Mr. Greenface ever because the wrath of the Grinch is very, very, very extreme.
That's supposed to be some sort of slur in Grinch culture.
Green face.
Apparently.
That was the most benign little offhanded mention that just really ticked him off.
So do we actually know what it means to Grinch someone when it says the Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat?
I assume it means follow them and make them miserable.
There you go.
They don't actually say that. I just kind of inferred that from what he was doing through the whole thing.
According to Google AI, grinching is a verb that means to make someone feel bad to describe someone as a killjoy or a party pooper.
Okay. Well, AI knows everything, so
The verb of grinching is used to mean a harsh, grating noise.
Interesting.
You could also use it to feel embarrassed or ashamed about something. No, that's cringe, not Grinch.
You think if you read him the definition, that would also be like a lengthy insult to the Grinch culture.
Yes,
Very
exactly.
true. I agree with Carmen. I like the Cat in the Hat's voice. Mason Adams does it in this one, but the voice I'm most familiar with is Alan Sherman, who does it in the actual Cat in the Hat special, but he had died by this time. But Mason Adams does a really good job as the Cat in the Hat with his weird and funky vocabulary and Bob, I forget the actor who
Holt?
plays the Grinch. Holt, yes. I think
Yeah,
he's not a bad Grinch either, even though I prefer Hans Conried.
yeah.
And they're the right two characters to put together. Like imagine a buddy cop film with with them two together.
Oh, that'd
I'd
be
watch that.
hilarious.
Yeah.
That'd be so awesome.
I was watching this and I was like, this is like when people online make up their own fan fictions about mashing up two completely unrelated characters. Although these are semi-related since they're both from Dr. Seuss. But it's like, who had the idea to put the cat in the hat with the Grinch?
Works better than Horton.
I, I suppose.
Horton, get your nest and get over here.
Hey, but Horton and the Grinch both exist with Who's, so there's that connection.
That is true.
Uh, uh, now Illumination's going to do that movie.
Oh no, they're listening in. That would be the way to tell whether they're listening or not.
And they'll be like, "No, we totally thought of it on our own." Yeah, right.
Been in production for years.
I think the thing that surprised me the most was I thought that the Cat in the Hat sounded familiar. So I looked up his voice actor, and he's the guy who did the voiceover for Smucker's commercials. With a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
With a name like Cat in the Hat, it has to be good.
And that voiceover he used to do like long before I would have seen it, but he apparently came back in the 90s or early 2000s or sometime when I would have seen commercials, and he did that same line again. And it's just his voice is so recognizable as the guy from the Smucker's commercials.
I don't think I've ever seen that commercial.
I just remember them riffing on that all the time with MST3K.
I don't know, just that line. I just remember that specific line from childhood for whatever reason. With a name like Smucker's, it's got to be good.
I don't blame you.
I don't think I was that familiar with him from anything else.
Yeah, I was looking at his filmography too.
Well, too, there are those voices for every generation. You know, you go to the 80s and you hear the same voices across all of the major cartoons or like
Hmm.
Casey Kasem doing Shaggy or Frank Welker doing
I was
Fred.
just gonna say Frank
Everybody.
Welker is in this too. He played Max.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like I think my favorite part of the special, and the only part that I really liked a lot, is the song, the "Soften Your Heart, Remember Your Mother."
That was quite good.
I don't really know that I had anything that stood out to me as something that I really liked. I was kind of bored with this one. I almost feel like I like the Halloween one better just
Oh
because
no,
it
I
was
agree. I
so
agree.
absolutely bizarre.
Hmm.
I liked the beginning when the Grinch first came across the Cat in the Hat at the picnic and everything. I thought that was funny. I also enjoyed watching them drive their little cars. There was just something
Yeah.
silly about it.
Yeah.
Like there's just the proportions of the cars and their bodies are just silly. And then I liked the ending leading up to the Cat in the Hat doing that song.
Mhm.
The middle was funny, but it was only because of the gadgets. Like
Hmm.
after he showed them off, I was like, oh, I'm getting a little like bored.
Yeah.
It falls a little flat in the middle. I would say the introduction of the two characters is pretty funny. The ending is funny and sad. The middle is kind of like meh.
Felt like fluff, a lot of it in the middle.
Yeah. I feel like this could have been 3 to 5 minute little episodes. Instead of like one long special, they should have just done like a
Broken up.
couple episodes of this, but maybe that probably wasn't their goal. But I think a short format would be pretty funny for kind of what they were going for.
I feel like something shorter would have made more sense because there was a lot of what you could call filler in this,
Hmm.
especially all the stuff with the gadgets.
Yeah,
But I don't know that it would have made sense for this thing because they were trying to do a television special. So,
sure.
I can't remember if you guys mentioned or not, but is this all you guys' first time seeing these two sequels? Or had
Yeah,
you seen it before?
yes. No,
yeah,
I'd never
very much
seen
so.
either of
No,
these.
Hmm.
I watched The Grinch, Grinches the Cat in the Hat. I don't know how I managed to come across this, but somehow it did end up airing on TV in the 2000s. So
Nice.
I thought it was a fever dream. Like and until Jonathan was talking about it, and I was like, I thought I made that up in my head.
Nice.
I was content that I was never gonna find this because like every time like I came up with Dr. Seuss, I'm like they crossed over at one point, and I'm like, no, I made that up. That was hallucinated, but no, it's real.
On the subject of fever dreams, did anyone else the psychedelic piece with the cat in the hat about three-quarters of the way through? Did anyone else get like the elephants are on parade thing from Dumbo?
Yes,
Kind
yes.
of,
Oh
but
my
you kind of
God.
always have that comparison when you have something
But then you
psychedelic in
psychedelic.
animation.
That is true. I actually really enjoyed that part. I thought it was really creative, and the way that they changed up the animation
Uh-huh.
was kind of neat.
I do enjoy when people try something different with animation rather than just doing the same thing,
Yeah.
especially for something that's already kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, considering the Grinch went from brown to kind of weirdly green to back to mossy brown to green to whatever else throughout the course of this.
His design is very inconsistent, even within his own specials.
Yeah. But this was probably, I think, like looking at what they did in the Halloween special, this was, to me at least, closest to what the book looked like. That could just be me.
I can see that.
Maybe kind of, I would say that it was a little simpler than the book, but as far as basic shapes, yes. Because this I felt like was the least detailed, probably because it probably had the least amount of budget.
Mhm.
Also true.
Yeah, the part with all the gadgets, as I was watching it, I was like, this is exactly the same type of thing that's in Santa Claus versus the Devil.
You're true. Very true.
I was like, how does this work? Like, where's the camera? Well, why can this guy use this to see whatever he wants to see?
Hmm.
Which is the same questions that I had with Santa Claus versus the Devil. How can Santa use this device to see all the children?
How did he turn everything persimmon pink? Persimmon?
Are persimmons pink? I thought persimmons were orange.
I thought so too.
Now I'm gonna Google it because I thought persimmons were like an orange-ish
Am
fruit.
I labeling it wrong? Or was it? I thought it
They
was
are
persimmon.
definitely orange.
Huh.
Maybe I'll Google persimmon pink and see if there's something out there that is.
Persimmon pink wigs that shows up.
There you go.
The closest you get is the American persimmon, but I would still describe that as peachish orangey rather than pink.
Americans always making things wrong.
Yeah, no, persimmons are orange, so I think that was just somebody wanted something that sounded good together.
Yeah,
Alliterative.
exactly. Gotta love alliteration.
Yes.
The guy that did the animations could have been colorblind or something.
That's a bad field to get into.
Oh, well, you rise above.
That's true.
Well, if the Grinch is changing color through the whole thing, then maybe.
I mean, you look at like 80s, and not to diss on 80s animators because they were under a lot of pressure and there was a lot that went into that stuff, but 80s animation generally is not known for its consistency at all.
Yeah,
You had so many people walking through walls and like changing skin tones halfway through the season. Yeah, that's not all that outside the box for what they were doing in the 80s. Generally. Just go back and watch G.I. Joe or Gem and the Holograms or the Transformers, and that'll be all you need to know right there.
There's your proof.
Yeah. Proof is in the pudding.
I think the only other interesting thing about this one is this was produced by Marvel Productions.
That is interesting. And I think it won an Emmy as well for the music.
I
I
think you're
saw that
right.
and I was like, why this?
Because the mother song, man.
They're the
Yeah.
only ones that applied for the award.
Okay, that
I don't know, but I'm like you show up. Oh, we did this thing. Okay, here you go. You're the only one that showed up. Congratulations.
Nah, Mother Song just like soloed everything else.
exactly.
It made everyone cry a puddle at the awards.
Well, people were more emotional back in the day.
Or hardened.
Yes. Our mothers don't bring tears. That's just a single tear. That's it.
The its competitors in that year were two Charlie Brown specials and two Smurfs specials.
It's a pretty tight crowd there.
Yeah. I could see it beating the Smurfs, but to beat Peanuts? That's interesting.
The one is the Charlie Brown celebration, and the other one is Someday You'll Find Her, Charlie Brown.
Is that about
Oh,
the
the
red
redheaded
hair girl?
girl. Yeah.
Poor guy.
That's more sad than anything that Grinch could sing about.
In defense, he didn't sing anything.
That's true.
Just looking through the list of all the stuff in the 80s, Charlie Brown is in there just about every year for a while, sometimes more than once.
It's amazing how many Charlie Brown specials that were cranked out over the course of time.
But you can do all of them, Jonathan, for a podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
I probably should at some point because I would like to catch up on a lot of some of that stuff. Probably not everything, but
They're still making new ones on Apple TV now.
Are
yes.
they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the newest one was about Franklin. I think that came out like last
Oh,
month
okay.
or so.
I was gonna say, I remember there being a big thing about the Christmas special only being on Apple TV and how upset people were about it.
I think that got they undid that rule.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But even still, just the fact that it was there, that makes sense though that they're kind of
Mhm.
using that and making new specials and such.
Mhm.
Well, I don't think I've got much more to say about these strange specials.
You learn nothing else from this. Do not call anyone Greenface or Mr. Greenface or go to the euphemism during the sour
Grinch
sweet
Night.
wind.
Mhm.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
someone's bullying you, remind them they have a mom.
Yes.
There you go.
If someone's Grinching you, remind
That's
them that
true.
they have a mom.
Now I'm gonna start calling people that like are making fun of me Grinches, and they're gonna be like, "What?" I'm gonna be like, "You're a Grinch."
Soften your heart, man.
Yeah,
Remember your
exactly.
mother.
She just dropped me off.
Yeah.
Remember your mother.
I kind of want to make using the euphemism a term that comes into the public consciousness.
We gotta
I just think that's
we
hilarious.
gotta start doing it in public now.
Absolutely. Get on it, John. Change the world one person at a time.
We just need one viral tweet.
Sure.
Exactly.
It's just such a weirdly hilarious way to refer to using the bathroom.
It reminds me of Fantastic Mr. Fox when for the word they use
Oh
to
yeah.
curse, they actually use the word cuss for
Oh,
Yes.
every
that's
curse
awesome.
word.
Yeah, that's another great one. That one we sometimes reference, so maybe we should try and do that with euphemism.
We need a euphemism break right now.
It would help if I had more people here around me that had seen this that would find it as funny as I did.
Well, you gotta start someplace. Just start showing it to people. You have a large family.
True, but I can't really in good conscience recommend it as anything other than just the fact that I want them to see someone say the euphemism.
Humor is universal.
I think if I told them that they needed to watch this, they'd be bored and confused, and they wouldn't take my recommendations anymore.
You know what you do though? You edit it down to all the interesting bits, which is probably about 30 seconds,
And
and center it around euphemism or going to a euphemism.
then he gets hit by a tree branch.
Yes.
It's
This is
important
what
transfer.
happens if you don't get to do the euphemism.
Hmm.
Well, I think that's probably a good place as any to end this one.
I guess the last thing is like in if you want to do like in order, what are your favorites in order, or which would you rewatch first?
Well, the original would be the first one. And I suppose I would watch the Halloween one next, and the Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat last.
I'm the first is definitely the Christmas, how the Grinch stole Christmas. Second, Grinches the Cat in the Hat. Third, the Halloween Grinch special.
I would say the original, the Grinch the Cat in the Hat, and then way back down the road, still waiting to be, hitchhiking to be picked up and brought up to where everybody else is, the Halloween special.
Nice. And I think I would do the Halloween one first, then the Christmas one, then Grinches the Cat in the Hat. So I
Nice.
think all four of us had four different permutations of this.
I think so. I wouldn't expect such a diverse selection of opinions on these, but there you
There you go.
go.
The Grinch would do that to you.
Hey, you brought on a diverse group of people, we give you diverse answers.
That's true.
Yes.
Or else this podcast is going right in the euphemism.
Hmm.
That's pretty good. I like that so much. I approve.
Thanks.
Well, until the next time, do you guys want to let people know where they can find you if they want more content from you? Mark?
Yeah, you can find me in my blogs. I have two blogs. One is the Animation Commendation at theanimationcommendation.com, where I post the animated film reviews, top 13 list, and I host a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire Animation Edition game show for past few years. And so you can check me out there. And I also have my live action Disney project at myliveactiondisneyproject.com, where I'm trying to watch and review every single theatrically released Disney film ever made. I've been doing it for over 10 years now, and I still have more to do. So follow me there if you care to follow me on that journey.
Nice.
And Carmen?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram because it's the only place I really post under the username Kiki_doodles. And I post mainly photography, but also sometimes drawings if I'm in the mood.
And Nikki?
You can find me on YouTube at Trivial Theater. I do a wide array of random, obscure, and straight up bad movies.
Okay, well, we will see you next time, and Nikki will be back to talk about the Jim Carrey version in the next episode. So, see you then. Thanks for listening to the Disney Movie Marathon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My Linktree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.